as long as I can remember, my grandparents, Nana and Papa, kept a small cross on their nightstand. Now, mind you, this wasn't just any cross. It was about yay high, yellow tinged, plastic, and did I mention it glowed in the dark? No one in my family knows exactly where this cross came from, but I know that anytime I went over to see them, that cross always mesmerized me and made me feel comfortable to know that someone was watching over me. And of course, there was that strange glow in the dark. When I was 12, Papa died, and Nana gave me that cross as a small inheritance as to which to remember him. Now, that cross has followed me from coast to coast, different homes, and today, that cross has a prominent place on my own nightstand. And in the category of things that I will never, ever be able to explain, ever so often, when I wake up in the middle of the night, that cross from 40 years ago, that tiny cross will still give off a faint, illuminating glow. When we think of inheritance in the traditional sense, we may think of cash in the bank, or perhaps under the mattress. Could be property, investments, jewelry. But I want to challenge that conventional view of looking at wealth. We need to take less of a focus off of the monetary aspect of wealth, and I think give a equal, broader, more expansive, and dare I say democratic view of what generational wealth really is. Let's call it the generational wealth remix. So when we think about that, it's going to be less of a focus on the material things and more of a focus on those intangible things, like perhaps a plastic cross that still glows in the dark. Now, think about this for a minute as we talk about our views of wealth. For many of us, we may not have that traditional money that we received. We look to the mega rich often to define what an inheritance would look like. But let's be truthful. Many of us may not get that Oprah-type inheritance where you get $1 million and you get $1 million. In fact, the Federal Reserve has data that talks about the disparity about who will actually receive an inheritance. 17% of white families, 6% of black families, 4% of Hispanic families, and 15% of other. Other is those who may have a mixed race identification. And so when we look at that number, we recognize that many people may not actually receive anything. And that same data also points to the fact that the average inheritance of those categories is $46,200. Now listen, I am not one to disparage $46,200. However, we know that in a lot of cases, if the money is given without any guidance, without any instructions, without any structure, that money is going to be wasted and squandered. In fact, additional research from Investopedia says that those individuals who do stand to inherit, 70% will lose it by the first generation, and 90% will lose it the generation following. So what can we do to be better stewards of whatever it is that we are going to share with the next generation? So again, let's take the focus off of the monetary, because the money here today, gone tomorrow. There is no guarantee that you will ever have something that you can pass on in the form of money, cash, property, or investments. So what can you pass along? We call it the voices, the vision, and the values. So let's start with our vision. What is that vision? The vision is a big view of what it is that you want to leave to your loved ones. It's your aspirations for who they are, who you want them to be, and all that is possible for their lives. Oftentimes when we think of vision statements, we think of corporate America. We think of or companies that need to have that vision posted and everyone gets in line behind it. But I want to challenge you to actually talk to your family about what that vision should look like. It should not be one person dictating to everyone else. That vision should be a shared family vision for everyone. And just like those corporations do, I think you should post that vision in a very visible place where everyone can see it, because it can serve as a roadmap or a guide as to what direction you want your family to go in, what dreams and aspirations you have for them. And guess what? Creating a vision has nothing to do with your net worth. It is all about who you are, and anybody can do it, regardless of how much money you have. As it relates, yes. The second piece to that is your values. What's important to you and why? Those beliefs can really serve as a guidepost for those individuals who are coming up after you. So I think about my grandparents, and both sets of my grandparents as an example. They both had a strong belief. They both had a strong faith. And I think that's why that cross meant so much to me, because it was something that I had tangible that really reflected who they are and what they believed in. One of the many values that my parents instilled in my sister and I was the gift of community connection. Growing up on 158th Street in Jamaica, Queens, was an experience, and it truly embodied the essence of what a village should be. The adults on the block loved on us, encouraged us, supported us. Even when there were times when we were a little mischievous, they corrected us, and that was okay too. But we knew that we had that love, that surrogate parent who would always take care of us. Whether it was shoveling snow for one another, or jamming at the block party, or perhaps our annual Father's Day picnics to Heckscher State Park, we all came together in the spirit of community. With my husband and I, what we tried to instill in our kids is the value of giving back, of compassion, of empathy. And we know sometimes with this generation, no offense, that can be hard sometimes to really teach that. But what we ended up doing was volunteering in different capacities, whether it was taking food from a food bank and helping to distribute it to people in need, or distributing holiday baskets for those individuals who might need some assistance, or our favorite, raking leaves that were kind of wet for seniors in the community. Those were all ways that we wanted to show our kids that it was not just about them, it was about how they could give back in a tangible way. And then finally, we talk about your voice. And your voice is your story. It's who you are, where you came from, and it's also about the bigger story of your family. So when I think about voices, I first look to, well, who are my relatives? Who are my ancestors? Those are the shoulders on which I stand. And so those voices talk to me about what their hopes were for who I am now as an individual. Your family story is something that needs to be shared. And for those of you who have taken the time to actually do Ancestry DNA or find out what your family tree looks like, that's invaluable information because it gives you a deeper connection to a broader, larger community. Additionally, your voices are also your traditions. What are those traditions that have stayed with you, with your family? Whether they were holiday dinners or other gatherings where you all came together, those traditions are things that need to be honored. Also, the voices are the voices of our ancestors. It has been said that when we take the voice, when we go to the older men and women in the village, that they are books of history and wisdom. And when one of them dies, it's like a library burning. And so we want to make sure that we capture those voices before it's too late. With those traditions, one of the things that my family has done every year since 1973 was to host an annual family reunion. And I'm proud to say that this year, we had our 50th anniversary milestone. And it's a time for us to come together to reflect where we've been and where we want to go as a family. And that's something that folks generations before us laid out for us, and we continue to do that. In summary, I want to talk about what you all can do as it relates to building that generational wealth with less of a focus on money, more of a focus on those gifts of your vision, your values, and your voice. First, let me say this. If you have money to give away, great, wonderful, good on you. But I don't want anyone to feel any shame or guilt if they do not have money. If you do, make sure you have a plan for that money, because you don't want your family members or loved ones being part of that 70% who end up squandering their wealth. And as an estate planning attorney, I'd be remiss to say, you need an estate plan in place. For those of you who do not have a physical inheritance that you can leave to someone, that's okay too, because there is merit in the vision, in the values, and in your voice. Second thing to consider is that when we think about the individuals that we want to leave things to, oftentimes we may sweeten our story and we might not tell them the whole truth. I want you to tell the truth. Your loved ones need to know what your story is, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and truthfully, some of the good stuff is in the bad and the ugly, and that's where we learn some of our best lessons in life. So don't be shy about sharing that story. And consider leaving notes as well as recordings for your family. Those things are invaluable because when you're gone, the voice is no longer there. I remember I had a client who I had the privilege of being in the hospital room with as she was transitioning. And she wanted to do a few things to her plan, and a family member, a loved one, called. And I said, I'll leave the room. And she was like, no, you stay. So I stayed, and she had the person on speakerphone. That person was not going to be able to make it to the hospital in time. And so she was encouraging that person to say, listen, I know you're going to do great things in life. I know that everything is going to be okay. I see you. I believe in you. Even though I didn't know who that person was on the phone, I could feel that relief from within her that now she had permission, so to speak, from her elder family member to go forth and prosper. So capture those stories, and more importantly, give that encouragement to your loved ones before it's too late. I don't want you being in a hospital room having to do that. Do it now while you have the capacity to do so. And then finally, consider giving a gift of sentimental value. Is there a special award that you received? Or perhaps there was a vacation that you took and you have a souvenir from that place. Or perhaps it's a book of cherished family secret recipes that have been passed down from prior generations. All of those things are valuable in its own way. To an outsider, they may not see the value in it, but to your loved ones, it may mean everything. It may even one day provide a measure of peace and comfort, like a plastic cross that still occasionally glows in the dark. Thank you.